I've spent the best part of a week sort of thinking about this one before making a video on it, because this news actually came on the 3rd of July. I didn't want to like make a video, jump the gun, go critical on it, and then realise later on that it actually wasn't that bad. So instead I've sort of thought about it for a bit, and I reckon that's going to result in a more rounded video, which is what hopefully I'm going to present here. I mean, I could still make myself look like a critical prick, or just a prick, but I guess we'll see. So the news in question came from an article by PC Gaming by Jeff Grubb, is the name of the guy who wrote it, which was posted on the 3rd of July. And the article's basically titled, "Ubisoft is finished with Finite experiences." The article begins with, "Your experience with Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege never has to end, and Ubisoft is looking to bring that ongoing, long-lasting relationship to all of its games going forward." In an interview posted to its news blog, Ubisoft Vice President Lionel Reynaud explained how the company wants to give player lots of smaller stories instead of one contained narrative that you finish and then forget. I don't think I forgot that, to be honest with you. This is part of the company's move towards games as a service, where it constantly updates its releases to keep players coming back for months, if not years. But Reynaud explained exactly how a number of smaller stories better serve both Ubisoft and its players. Reynaud said, "What drove this is the will to not give finite experiences. The idea was that you have this conflict and the resolution, and then it's finished. You've killed the bad guy, we build a strong nemesis, okay then. And the goal of the game is to kill him or free the country. We've done that a few times in our game, but when you succeed, you have to leave the game, because there's nothing else to do." Fair enough. So the goal was to break this, and say that you will be the hero of a region or population many times, not just once.
"You're the one they call the hero of Kvatch, aren't you?"
And if you get rid of a dictator or an oppressor, something else is going to happen in the world, and you will have a new goal. A pretty interesting change in structure, if you will, to then present to all your games. Is this going to be presented to the Steep sequel as well? Because I want to know if I'm going to be killing dictators galore in that. Steep 2. Siberia. On a serious note, it is quite an interesting thing to then want to apply to all of your games, which will include Assassin's Creed, of course, which is why we're talking about this above all else. Let's talk about how it's going to affect that, because that's probably why you're watching, to be fair. You can tell based on how everything sort of is in the game that this could already be in effect with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Is that a good or a bad thing? That is the question that you have to ask yourself. And I mean, when I initially thought about it, I thought, you know what, this could be a bad thing. And obviously there are a few arguments for how it could be a good thing, one being the game will last longer, I guess, in the long term. But the bad obviously being that the story in the short term will be shorter, and the investment in the character like we've had with Bayek or Ezio and heaven forbid Connor, it won't be as long as those stories, and so there's not enough really there, is there, really, if you think about it, to get invested. So there is a good and a bad to both of these, depends on where you want to look at it from. Obviously this could be good from the perspective of an RPG experience, because there'll be plenty of content there come the end to just keep you coming back for a bit and keep playing it for maybe like 100 odd hours, or depends on the quality of the game when you play it, whether or not you like it. So as much as this could be a good thing as an RPG, because it could keep you coming back for more for a while, from an Assassin's Creed point of view, Assassin's Creed has always been a story where you've been facing the Templars, or whatever you've been doing, facing this big bad, and you've been building up to it, and the story was about the characters' internal conflict and their internal progression all the way to the end, where they then knock this fucker off the end of the map, and then suddenly, yeah, the game is over, sure, but at least back in the Ezio trilogy, it was memorable, and you'd play it again, and you'd like it, you'd enjoy it. And I honestly enjoyed Assassin's Creed 2, playing it as many times, but I've played that game so many times that I don't actually care to count. You know, I couldn't tell you how many times I played it through Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood of Revelations, Black Flag, or 1. I couldn't tell you how many times I played through those games. So there is a quality there, but you got to remember at the same time as this, that gaming is changing and becoming more modernised, and before Origins, one of the biggest problems with Assassin's Creed was it was still clinging to the older formulas to make the game work. So not everything that worked spotlessly back in, say, the days of the Ezio trilogy or Assassin's Creed 1, or even as far as Black Flag, are going to work now. So there have to be changes made. I'm just not entirely sure if this is 100% the right one. Obviously, with recent gaming trends and things like that, fresh content does appear to be appealing to players, so releasing fresh content regularly will appeal to a greater audience, and it might be a very good business technique as far as gaming is concerned. fair enough. I understand why this is going to be a thing and why it's going to be in Assassin's Creed and other Ubisoft games, because they're going to apply it to all their titles. But at the same time, I know a lot of players who would rather have an investment in a character as opposed to this experience that's going all over the place all the time. And to be fair, investment in a character and a lack of finite experience doesn't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. You could go between the two a little bit, have investment in the character over these experiences, and it would be fine. But how a single narrative manages to captivate an audience is by applying a constant end goal that the character is aiming to get to. And so that establishes what the protagonist wants, and suddenly you understand the protagonist better. If you remove that and you have several narratives going on, then it could be all over the place, and you could find yourself finding it harder to wind up giving a shit about the protagonist at all. That is what needs to be considered here, of course. Doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the case, it's just what could happen. But just because there's going to be content added to the game after the release quite regularly, if this is applied to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, or Assassin's Creed as a franchise after the fact, there will always be a main story to tie to the modern day. There'll always be that there, so it won't be 100% bad, surely. In fact, for all we know, it could just not affect how the narrative works in Assassin's Creed at all. It could just keep the game alive for longer after you finish that story with its current value. But this split focus does lead me to worry about how that could harm the quality of the main story and my investment in the protagonist. If there's so many focuses elsewhere, then it's likely that not as much effort, or as work for that matter, will go into that specific part of the development. Regardless, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Tell me what you think. There are good points that could come out of this, there are bad points that could come out of this. Ultimately, it could affect Assassin's Creed negatively or positively. Doesn't quite matter yet. I just guess we'll have to find out at some point. But thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, share. Let me know what you think. Go ahead and drop me a follow on Twitter. Help me make sense of this, if you will. And I'll see you all very soon with another video at some point.